In the Actilos Empire, like a ton of heirs are born, but only the strongest one gets the throne, which means they literally have to unalive each other. And whoever makes it out alive is crowned emperor. The youngest heir was also the youngest one in this whole deadly ritual. A 13-year-old prince straight up offed all his brothers and sisters, tied them all together by their hair, and just started dragging them. He showed up in front of the old emperor, who was actually super impressed by the kid's power, like he was totally stoked and wanted to give him props. But in that same second, a dagger gets shoved right into his chest, and the little prince is just standing there with this totally innocent smile. While his dad is literally coughing up blood, he says that waiting was a total bore and he wanted the throne like right now. Plus, he hated the idea of anyone being above him. And that dude is now the current emperor of Actilos Raniero Actilos. Angelica's at the wedding altar with the emperor, cause she was basically sold off to this psycho as his bride. The priest tells them to seal. And when she looks at Raniero, she's like, whoa, he looks totally different. But then he suddenly flashes this super creepy grin. He's relieved Angelica finally woke up, cause like a little longer and he would have been bored out of his mind. But for real, this is all going down in a novel. The one Angelica got dropped into right at her wedding to the emperor. The book's main character is this goddess Serafina. She's like the perfect flower that bloomed in the Actilos Empire. Before he met the goddess emperor, Raniero was always totally obsessed with taking over more land. Then in Serafina's clear eyes, he saw his own reflection all stained with blood. And he starts catching these intense feels for her, like a total love-hate vibe. Raniero straight up kidnaps her from the temple and takes her to the Imperia, where he plans on making her just as twisted as him, but instead she just gets even more beautiful. The emperor's obsession got even more psycho, and he took out Serafina's first love, a knight named Eden. The goddess can't handle it and just loses control, while Raniero completely loses his mind. Besides them, there were other characters in the novel, but Angelica gets yeeted into the body of the Empress, who is basically a nobody in the story. See, in the Imperia of Actilos, you can't get a divorce. You can only remarry after your spouse kicks the bucket. So after snatching the goddess on his way back from the temple, Raniero immediately had his wife's head chopped off. And that's how Angelica ends up in the body of the Empress, who got unalived right at the start of the book. She's read tons of these soul-traveling stories, but usually the main characters possess a villain and save themselves by not repeating the same mistakes. Since she can't think of another way out, Angelica decides that on the day Raniero goes to the temple, she's gonna fake her own death and dip. She's totally hyped about this plan she just came up with. Cause the emperor won't even double-check if she's dead, since he only offed her to marry the goddess. Until then, she decides to pretend she doesn't even exist and stay out of Raniero's sight. While she's thinking all this over, Angelica doesn't even notice that all of a sudden, the emperor pops up right in front of her. He asks her with this cruel smirk, "How much longer are you gonna pretend you don't see me, just ignoring my existence?" Angelica claps back right away, saying she would never disrespect him like that. But then she takes this clumsy step by accident, steps on the hem of her dress, and totally faceplants. Even though the fall is super embarrassing, she's just glad she answered him quick. Cause Raniero hates it when things drag on. A bunch of servants even lost their lives for not quickly fixing whatever the emperor didn't like. Raniero steps on her dress, smiles like a villain, and gives the Empress one chance to explain herself. So to cover her butt, Angelica totally makes up this story about having some weird condition. A chronic thing that makes her basically pass out with her eyes open. When she sees he's not buying it, she adds that Raniero's whole vibe is just like way too powerful, and that someone as small as her just couldn't handle it. When he asks if it's her fault, she quickly swerves, comparing him to the sun. Like, nobody blames the sun if you stare at it too long and go blind, right? The Emperor's like wondering if she's planning to go the rest of her life without ever looking him in the face, scared she'll just pass out again. Trying to come up with the perfect comeback? Angelica asks if she can look at him, and then glances up. Raniero is totally satisfied with his choice of Empress. She's all humble before him, and he instantly reacts, grabbing her throat and promises he'll answer any question she asks. She gets that her life literally depends on what she asks next. So she asks him why he picked her. But Raniero is super disappointed, calling her question basic, lame, and totally predictable. The Emperor is worried he'll be bored to death answering, but he keeps his promise out of pity. He explains that when he announced he was getting married, a ton of aristocrats and kings sent portraits of their daughters, and they filled the entire room. He ordered them all to be hung up on the wall. He sat on a cushion by the bed and just threw a knife at the wall. Raniero gets a kick out of remembering the exact moment when the blade went right through Angelica's left eye in the portrait. He takes back his criticism, but then his mood flips on a dime. And holding her chin up with the tip of his boot, he tells her to try harder. Otherwise, he promises he'll end her. Angelica promises she'll do better and be more interesting. Raniero leaves the room, and the second he's gone, she just collapses right on the floor. She's celebrating that the wedding day actually went okay, and that he hasn't killed her yet. At dawn, Angelica wakes up to the Emperor touching her under the blanket, and she jumps up immediately. Raniero is totally unimpressed, cause she slept in until 9 and calls her lazy. While he's getting dressed, he calls her basic, boring, dull, and just totally unattractive. Then he just leaves the bedroom. The maid suggests that the Empress start her morning routine with a bath. And she's like, yeah, okay. Since Raniero called her boring and dull, she's hoping he won't even bother coming to see her anymore. Angelica knows she has to find a way to escape. She finds out from the maid that today is May 19th and that the emperor met Serafina at the church in Tunio on a freezing cold winter day. That means she still has about 7 months before everything goes down. Until started popping into her head. Angelica is the second princess of the Hanro kingdom. She has an older brother, an older sister, and a younger brother. She was a royal, so she must have studied basic history and geography, which should totally help her figure out where to run away to. The border of whatever country she escapes to can't be too far from the palace, and it can't have any beef with the Imperia. Security there has to be way more chill, and it doesn't even matter if the country is rich and powerful or super weak, cause either way comes spring. After the emperor has his meltdown, the whole country whose system was built around one awesome leader is gonna get wrecked. While she's eating breakfast, Angelica notices her ladies-in-waiting are keeping their distance, and she thinks that's a good thing. She doesn't need to get all buddy-buddy with them, since she's planning to bounce and getting close could just cause some unexpected drama. But for now, she decides to just play it cool and act the part of a good empress. She asks the ladies what their names are, and the older one introduces herself as Marquis Jaksui's mom, and the younger one is Marin Count Locke's wife. Angelica is shook seeing they're both from major families, like big shot families. She can't figure out why she's getting such a weird vibe, so to break the ice, she asks them to help her get the hang of the castle. The Empress checks her schedule and finds out there's literally nothing official planned, so she can just chill. Since she still has 7 months, she's cool with it, but the next few days are the same story. Now Angelica totally gets why things are so awkward. The ladies are straight up ghosting her because it's wild that an empress has nothing on her schedule. While she's trying to figure out her next move, she remembers her character brought a maid named Cecin with her from back home. So the next morning, during tea, the Empress asks the Marquise where her maid is at, and why she's like nowhere to be found. According to Jaksui, Cecin is in training to become a proper lady-in-waiting. You know, someone fit for Actilos. Angelica's not against her maid getting some training, but she thinks it's sus that as her boss, she was kept completely in the dark. The Marquise was all like, well, since the Empress never asked about Cecin, I just assumed she was in the loop. Realizing the woman she's dealing with is pretty sneaky, Angelica decides to switch up her tactics, and apologizing, she owns up to her mistake. Knowing it's not about her ego, but about the bigger picture, the girl decides to be the one to back down first. And she asks again with a smile if she can see Cecin. Meanwhile, back at her place with her son, the Marquise of Shaxiu is totally freaking out, because the Empress wasn't the airhead she thought she was at first. The woman is so annoyed, seeing some young girl from a tiny kingdom has the nerve to talk back to her. Her daughter Sylvia walks in when she hears all the drama, and wants to know what's going on. The Marquise is convinced she wouldn't be going through all this if Sylvia had been the Empress, and it stings that the family totally missed her prime marriage years waiting for the Emperor to pick her. Sylvia begs her mom not to be so harsh on her, cause the Emperor was the one who made the choice, and she even asks her brother to back her up. But the Marquise isn't trying to hear any of it, and she's fuming that they waited all that time for nothing, which basically tanked her daughter's value. Not being able to handle her mom's vibe, Sylvia runs out of the room crying, and the Marquise tells his mom to chill out. He's the finance guy and is tight with the Emperor, so he's sure the Emperor will ditch the wife himself as soon as they give him a good excuse. They realize all they need is a reason. The Marquise and her son Jaxo decide they'll drop some hints to the Emperor about Angelica's flaws when the time is right, since Raniero's whole deal is that anything that could mess with the country gets axed immediately. All it takes is a little nudge from the nation. Right now, it's budget season, and all the money for every department is getting looked over by both the Emperor and the Empress. But Angelica is totally hands-off with this stuff, and anyone can see that's a problem. That's holding back Actilos' progress. After Kazan came back, things were super chill for a few days, cause this maid really got her lady. But the whole time, the head lady-in-waiting Marquise Jacqueline kept giving the Empress the cold shoulder. Angelica decided to just let it slide, but now she realizes that was a big mistake. Cause the Emperor just summoned her, and she knows for a fact the ladies-in-waiting are behind it. Not knowing who else was with Raniero, Angelica decides to play it safe and gives him a way deeper bow than the others. Turns out it was Marquis Yaxi. So like the Marquis was supposed to be giving the Emperor the lowdown on the third quarter budget. He starts spilling tea about some drama with the cash for the Empress's palace, and Raniero's low-key impressed by Angelica's guts. Cause he thought she went all out and approved a crazy amount for her own place, but then the Marquis hits him with a plot twist. He suddenly drops the bomb that the Empress wasn't even running the palace, she was just like living it up and vibing. He's all like she had zero interest in her duties, and they found some random employee handling everything for her. And in her name too. That's when it clicks for Angelica. The Marquise had been ghosting her on tasks this whole time on purpose, just to set up all this drama. The Marquise claims a bunch of party expenses got tacked on, and even though the other officials looked the other way, he just had asterisk to speak up. And even though the dude was totally capping, the girl had like zero receipts to prove he was lying. The Marquise had basically iced Angelica out this whole time, and Cizin is her only real one in the whole palace. So the Emperor asked Jackie like, what's your endgame here? The guy's like, no hidden agenda, bro, I'm totally loyal to the fam. Basically leaving it all up to Raniero to make the call. Angelica's just thinking, for real, how are these people trying to play the Emperor with such a basic lame excuse? Angelica catches Raniero's vibe, and it's basically screaming, You better make this interesting before I get bored and mad. So she goes, it literally breaks my heart to see the Emperor stuck doing all this boring routine stuff like this budget proposal. Like this could have been an email. So to show she's sorry, she suggests some entertainment to get Raniero hyped. Seeing the Emperor is actually into it, Angelica suggests they organize a hunt. And for prey, she nominates the 3 clowns standing right in front of him. This literally horrifies Jackie's family. Angelica remembered reading about these kinds of hunts and knew it was a total Raniero vibe. But like she's gotta save her own skin, so she reminds the Emperor about her chronic illness, saying hunting her would be like chasing a sick bunny. Totally boring, right? And when they ask if she's just trying to dodge being the prey, she promises to get swole and be a worthy target by winter. The Marquis is fuming at Angelica, calling her idea straight up stupid and insane. But Angelica flips the script and calls out Jackie for never even giving her a heads up about the budget. Like from the jump. So she's like, the Marquis should feel honored to be the prey since he's the one who wasted the Emperor's time with this snooze fest. The girls' mic drop moment ends with Raniero literally clapping, totally vibing with his Empress. The Marquis starts begging him not to put his old mom through something so messed up. He's like, just take me. But the Emperor shuts that down and says, don't call it messed up, it's an honor. You know being prey for his entertainment. Raniero snaps his fingers, calls the guards, and agrees with Angelica that the blame is on all 3 of them. He says the Empress is guilty for not stopping the Marquis and his mom from even showing up, from coming to annoy him. And they're responsible for trying to drag the Emperor into their petty personal drama with his wife. Turns out Raniero was low-key expecting some drama like this, ever since the Marquis's little sister didn't get picked to be his fiancée. He knew the whole deal, but just let it ride, because honestly, he couldn't be bothered to care about their thirsty personal ambitions. He kinda wonders if Sylvia would have been the same way. Then Raniero walks up to Angelica, lifts her chin, and just kisses her. He notes that she hasn't messed up yet, scoops her up into his arms, and asks if she can keep that perfect streak going forever. So the next day at the Empress's pad, things got shaken up. The Marquis basically became prey, and got booted from her spot as the main lady in waiting. TBH for the Empress's squad, that job was a major headache, so when the head spot opened up, Cixin swooped in and took it. And after a whole bunch of crazy stuff went down at the palace, no one dared to sleep on the Empress again. Since Angelica wasn't about that party life, everyone started seeing her as this cold and bougé Empress. And even though those rumors were bugging her, she just started grinding on her Empress duties, which meant she was totally swamped. One day leaving the castle, Angelica sees this girl in the courtyard and is like, who is she? Her maid gives her the lowdown. It's Sylvia, the little sister of Henry Jackskill, you know, the prey. Apparently the girl came to the castle to try and get a face-to-face with the Empress. Angelica's like, why is Sylvia here now? Her family's whole situation was already decided days ago. Turns out the girl's been waiting around for a few days ever since they made the final call. Angelica decides to see what Sylvia wants. Sylvia's super polite when they meet. The Empress says she's sorry for the long wait, but straight up tells her she can't reverse the sentence. But surprisingly, Sylvia's like, nah, my family got exactly what they deserved. Sylvia actually kneels in front of Angelica and asks for a job, since with her mom gone, there's an open spot for a handmaiden. The Empress is like, what's the catch? Why would her enemy's kid want to work for her? Maybe she's just trying to hide out. You know, spy on her and wait for the right time to get payback for her mom and brother. But Sylvia explains she was raised to be the Emperor's companion, or to be totally loyal and an ally to the Empress. She says she spent most of her life stuck at home, completely out of the loop. And now with her family taken down as prey, she's literally got nowhere else to go. Of course, Sylvia's heart is breaking for her fam. I mean, they're her family, even if they were awful to her. But fighting back tears, she admits that most of all, she just wants to live. Later that night, lying in bed, Angelica thinks the only one who wasn't touched by Sylvia's story is Raniero. But she knows this isn't a decision she can make out of pity, because there's a good chance the girl totally hates her. Angelica jumps out of bed and heads to the balcony to get some air and clear her head. Then out of nowhere, Raniero appears and she lets out a shriek. Angelica asks him what he's doing there, but the Emperor is like, I don't need a reason to visit my own wife. He asks how her day went and says he's glad his prey has started their training. Raniero decided to add 2 rules to the whole thing. Give the prey weapons, and if they can hold out for 3 hours, they'll be set free. The Emperor asks again how Angelica's day was, and she's right about to spill about Sylvia, but before she can say anything, Raniero tells her she should take her on, saying it sounds interesting. He suggests sending Sylvia to the hunting grounds to act as a hunter, to take out her own mother and brother as a way to prove her loyalty to Angelica. The Empress is shook by how easily he figured out what she was worried about. But for him, the insecurities of regular people are like totally obvious. Raniero suggests making her a lady-in-waiting on one condition: she has to play the part of the hunter. Angelica agrees, but seeing she's not sure about it, the Emperor offers her a drink and promises to give Sylvia the order directly himself. He smiles, thinking the Empress is too weak and can't even give a simple command. Raniero Actilos was born human, but he's basically something else entirely. A god-tier psycho who looks at people like they're ants, and there's no tragic backstory that made him so twisted. He was just born a straight-up villain. Out of nowhere, he dumps the drink he was offered all over Angelica and calls her out for being a total chicken. The Emperor tells her to just forget being scared for a sec and get lost in the pleasure, and this whole vibe of his is just absolute dominant evil. He's hotter and more powerful than anyone else, and he just grabs her and tosses her onto the bed lying down right next to her. Raniero's like, Angelica is so tiny and weak, but says she's gotta be good prey for him. The girl plays along, promising him whatever. But low-key, she has zero plans to be his victim. She's gonna play hard to get, and the second Raniero leaves on his campaign, she's gonna bounce, and once he finds Serafina, he won't even bother looking for her. Then the Emperor just randomly remembers the second rule he added to the hunt. He wants Angelica to join in as a hunter. Plot twist. Raniero thinks it's no big deal because the rules say the prey can't hurt the hunter. But Angelica knows for a fact that the mother-son duo, the Jacks, are totally cornered and won't miss a chance to drag her down with them. Even though Raniero made up all these rules, she knows they're completely worthless. The hunt is set for the solstice, and that's less than a month away. Angelica was planning on networking with all the aristocrats before the festivities. But for the sake of, surviving, she ghosted all her social events. Being a hunter meant she got a pass to go to the pavilion and watch the prey train. In the Actilos Empire, everyone trains in martial arts, so if a war breaks out, even women and kids can throw down. According to Angelica's lady-in-waiting Duchess Nurmi, Jax was totally slacking in training until yesterday, but everything flipped after the Emperor visited. He told them about the new rules. They're looking for the best coach for Angelica, and she's like, I want to learn how to shoot. If she gets in their range, she's toast, so she has to keep her distance from the prey. The Empress asks Nurmi to teach her how to use the weapon with the longest range. When she starts training with a bow, Angelica complains about how heavy it is, which totally shocks the court maid, cause even little kids can hold a bow. She pulls herself together and gets up, grabs the bow and arrows and takes aim, just hoping to at least get it close to the target. Meanwhile, the Emperor calls for Sylvia to talk about her wanting to be Angelica's lady-in-waiting. He tells her that she has to pass a test as a hunter at the Solstice Festival. He's bummed by her lack of a shocked reaction, which he was totally expecting to see on her face. Raniero tells his assistant to have the guards take Sylvia away. The Emperor finds out Angelica bailed on all her social events just to learn how to shoot a bow. He calls her a coward with this total smirk on his face, but then he finds out the girl literally fainted. Waking up in bed, Angelica is muttering to herself, cause she felt like her character being a princess, and all should have had some kind of training, and way more stamina. Then out of nowhere, Raniero just shows up totally weirded out by the way she's talking, like she has zero memories of her own childhood. When she realizes the Emperor came to see her after she passed out, Angelica thanks him for the concern. Raniero notices she's still super pale, and basically calls her an idiot for not knowing you're supposed to rest when you're tired. Obviously, it never even occurs to the people in this country that someone can just be weak. I can't. Angelica's trying to tell Raniero she gets that rest is important, but she's literally just trying her best not to die, lol. He insists the Empress isn't going to die and tells a maid to grab some cold water and a towel. Raniero then places the towel on Angelica's forehead. But he gets bored taking care of her super fast, and calls for a lady-in-waiting, especially after seeing the Emperor just chilling in the armchair. The girl can feel the danger. His movements are totally screaming boredom. Angelica asks the Duchess to bring some food. And not even 10 minutes later, Raniero is feeding the Empress with a tiny spoon, totally surprised by how little she's eating. The Emperor is really pushing for the girl to train hard and not become prey because if she does, he can't hunt her in the winter. According to the Empress, that's the exact reason she's trying to find a good instructor to train with. When he finds out Angelica still hasn't found a trainer, he decides to just start teaching her himself. She gratefully accepts his offer and promises to try to become a good huntress when she wakes up in the morning. The Empress is feeling way better. That remedy Raniero gave her worked like a charm. He gave it to her himself. It was some medicine that put her into a super deep sleep. He stayed with her all night and only bounced at sunrise. Angelica asks Cecen when the Emperor called for her at the training grounds, and when she finds out the maid has no idea, she gets super mad. She rushes to get dressed so he won't be annoyed by her being late and runs all the way to the field. Before she can even be happy that the Emperor's not there, she hears his voice behind her totally ticked off that she was late waking up. Raniero is shocked by the girl's bow, which looks like a kid's toy, but she explains she's not strong enough yet to pull back the string. The Emperor gives her a bow that actually fits her, and it feels even lighter and more comfortable than her last one. After an hour of training, Raniero announces for the 67th time that Angelica could have been toast from that same attack. After 30 minutes of shooting at targets, the Emperor gets bored, so he brings out some wooden swords and starts a fencing lesson. Without teaching her any of the theory or basics, he jumps straight into some intense training, claiming the girl has way too many weak spots. Angelica gets defeated again, and the Emperor is surprised that she can't manage to dodge a single one of his attacks. She explains that maybe the problem isn't her, but that Raniero is just way too fast. Finally, the Emperor starts to break it down for her. The fundamentals of combat. Even though he was muttering about her slow moves, he didn't seem like he was planning to stop the training. Angelica just can't figure out why Raniero, who gets bored with literally everything, was still going with the training. She thanks him for the lesson and promises to work hard, even if it takes time. And the Emperor, after a moment of silence, suddenly pats her on the head. Even though the Actilos Empire is massive, rumors spread like wildfire. Nothing has been officially announced. But the aristocrats are already whispering about the hunting festival. They're also talking about how the Emperor took care of Angelica after she passed out, and then how he waited for her for 2 hours at the field to train her himself. The ladies in waiting, of course, are the ones spreading all this tea, but it's actually a good look for the Empress since it'll strengthen her position. But for someone who's planning to dip all this public attention is a total drag. Okay, so I def gotta stay on the Emperor's good side now, cause another psycho like Jax could totally pop up. To show he's into the Empress, he's getting gifts sent to her 24/7 from all over the Empire, and even from other countries. Angelica finds out the hunting grounds will be finished in 4 days, and she can go check them out soon. She knows it's gonna be a tough L to take in a showdown with Jax's mom and him, no matter how hard she tries, so Angelica wants to dig up some dirt to get an edge. An edge in this battle. As she keeps training, Raniero starts getting real sketched out by the whole human mind thing. He's doubting her sword skills, so Angelica figures she should just train by running instead. After a super awkward pause, the Emperor decides to take her to scope out the hunting grounds. Seeing the whole setup, Angelica realized once again that Raniero is used to doing things big. If she gets up in that tower, she'll have a killer view and a major advantage with the bow. The Emperor basically wants her to know he went all out to make her comfy, and she's just like, thanks. From then on, Angelica would meet up with Raniero every morning, and they'd practice shooting after their workout. She'd stay up super late prepping for the summer solstice party, even though she was kinda worried, 'cause she hadn't seen Sylvia since that day. The Empress had zero time to waste on other people's drama. Then one morning, Raniero brings Angelica a dress. He wants her to wear it to the party if she, makes it through the hunt. Finally, the big day of the solstice event arrives. The hunt is scheduled for after lunch. Angelica walks up to the imperial throne and asks Raniero if she's late, and he just laughs. He tells her he's been waiting for like 2 hours. Then he grabs her hand and pulls her onto his lap. They sit there like some cute couple talking about the game plan for how Angelica's gonna move around the hunting grounds. And with that, the celebration kicks off. Raniero, still holding her hand, gives a shout out to everyone there, and then the big feast begins. But Angelica is so freaked out she can't even take a bite. Raniero hands her a cup, and the stuff inside is way different from his drink. He whispers in her ear to chug the whole thing, and Angelica, being obedient, drains the cup. She's terrified with no clue what was in that drink, cause her hands and feet start feeling super hot like immediately. Raniero tells her to just try and ride it out, and soon everything will look different. Then he just starts cracking up, and when he notices the guests giving him weird looks, he just tells them to enjoy the food. Suddenly she's starving and starts to chow down, and the food tastes way more intense than usual. After that drink, everything got super trippy. Her body felt all light and hot one second, and heavy the next. Instead of being nervous, she's actually hyped for the hunt now. During the meeting, she gets a little gift from Raniero. It's some seriously nasty stuff, a purified juice from the Ciolo poison frog. The Emperor's message was basically, you know what to do with this. The Empress shows up and the guests are all fawning over her. Angelica's kinda bummed they can't watch from the railing. Looking out at the hunting field where the targets are hiding, she spots Sylvia next to her. All of a sudden, Sylvia's shaking with excitement, repeating over and over to herself that it's all gonna be okay. That pity Angelica felt a few weeks ago when she saw Sylvia on her knees now just feels like a total lie. If she pulls off this mission, she'll get a sweet reward. But if she messes up, it won't even matter anyway. The Emperor joins them, saying again that Angelica isn't gonna get taken out, and once more just ignores the tea. Someone asks what they spiked her drink with. And just like that, the hunt is on and the Empress is ready to roll. She's totally hyped to get out there and juice up her arrows with that special poison Raniero hooked her up with. Angelica posts up in the watchtower just vibing and listening, when all of a sudden she hears something snap down below. But when she goes to aim, the Empress sees it's Sylvia. The girl looks like she wants to tell Angelica something, but right then the Marchioness of Yaxi shows up. She sneaks up behind her and just yanks her own daughter by the hair, looking totally psycho. She's talking all this smack about how she's gonna rip her heart out and hand it to the Emperor, hoping he'll be into it. Like she thinks this will get her on Raniero's good side. Meanwhile, Angelica takes aim from the tower shoots but totally whiffs it. The Marchioness figures out where the arrow came from and gives Angelica this major death stare. But with her mom distracted, Sylvia just tackles her and throws her to the ground. She grabs a rock and holds the Marchioness down, going full-on feral like she's fighting for her life. She just starts bashing her in the head over and over. As Angelica climbs down from the tower, she's kinda bummed that Raniero totally missed the show. Sylvia drops to her knees in front of the Empress and is like, let me claim this kill as mine. Angelica tells the girl she's got her back, then pulls out a dagger and slits the Marchioness's throat. And right then, Henry Jack pops out from behind the trees. He's totally shook seeing his mom dead, and the Empress just points her bow right at the Marquis. He's like shaking with rage, and the arrow just grazes him but still hits his shoulder. Then out of nowhere, Angelica feels this crazy pain in her muscles. Like they're about to rip apart and she just collapses. Henry's already lifting his axe to finish her, but then Raniero shows up behind him and just runs him through with his sword. He walks over to Angelica, smiles, and starts explaining that stuff she drank. He's like, it gives you strength to push past your limits, boosts your mood, and makes you fearless. But it totally wrecks your body and the crash is sudden. That's why you can't really use it in a fight. Then Raniero pops the antidote in his mouth, kisses Angelica, and passes it to her. The pain just fades away and the Emperor shows her the prey she hunted. He's smiling and announces a party for the new Empress. When they step out on the castle balcony, Raniero tells the whole crowd that Angelica bagged the kill all by herself. Everyone just drops to their knees for the Emperor and Empress, and it hits her again that the people in this country are all about that power vibe. The party kicks off, and when they walk into the hall, Angelica takes her spot next to Raniero. Since the Emperor has to do the first dance of the night, he and Angelica get up to hit the floor. All of a sudden, she starts to lose her balance and totally eats it, but she doesn't grab Raniero's hand when he offers it. Angelica hits the floor hard, and the Emperor just smiles. He sees she didn't mess up. Like, even then, if she'd grabbed his hand, she would have touched him without permission, and that's a big no-no. Angelica is totally shocked when Raniero bends down, scoops her up, and puts her right back on the throne. Back in the hall, Sylvia shows up to greet them, and all the guests start whispering about how she has zero shame. Some random aristocrat starts demanding they kick the Marchioness's daughter out of the imperial hall. But Angelica claps back, reminding everyone that the girl literally offed her own mom to prove she was loyal. The Empress is thinking that Sylvia might be even more ride or die than that dude himself. Hearing her super cocky tone, Raniero just starts cracking up. He thinks her vibe is interesting and funny, and once the Emperor starts laughing, literally everyone else joins in. And Angelica's just thinking they're all fake laughing like a bunch of puppets. Turning to the Emperor, Sylvia asks for the prize he promised her. Just like he promised, Raniero names the girl as the Empress's lady-in-waiting, and she's super thankful for it. Real talk, she could have gotten the handmaiden gig after the party, but Sylvia had to be extra and make a big scene. By getting it personally from Raniero in front of all the rich folks, she basically proved she's the Empress's official rep now. And nobody can ignore her. Angelica, totally wiped from all the small talk, dipped out to the patio and sat by the fountain. The girl jumped to her feet the second she saw the Emperor walking up to her holding a flower. He pointed out that, against all expectations, she was acting like nothing even happened, even after she literally unalived someone. While saying that a weak person would be totally shaking after taking someone out, he put the flower in her hair. And for real, even though it was self-defense, Angelica's a killer now, but she gets that feeling guilty won't change a thing. The girl thanked Raniero for showing up just in time to take out Henry, because otherwise she'd be dead right now. The Emperor gave Angelica some kind of mixture to make her act out and create a wild scene, even though Raniero knew all about the side effects. He didn't feel guilty since everything was going according to plan step by step, but he couldn't guess how the Empress would react. Would she feel guilty, or just run away scared? But Angelica, who he thought wouldn't even show up to the banquet, appeared totally unfazed in the dress that Raniero had given her, and in that moment, he felt a little jolt like he was seeing her face for the very first time. The Emperor thought it was kinda weird, but he smiled sweetly, held out his hand, and offered to head back inside the castle. The girl was shook when she saw Raniero taking her to his private wing of the castle. They went into this massive room. It was the Emperor's secret spot, totally off limits even for the servants. Raniero takes off his shirt and gets close to a surprised Angelica and kisses her. Then he gets into the hot pool in the room and calls her over. As she dips her feet in, Angelica wonders why the Emperor is showing her this secret place that nobody knows about. Tired of her being so shy, Raniero grabs her leg and just pulls her into the water. She's totally caught off guard and doesn't know what to do. And when the Emperor, calling her Angie, lets her touch him, he hugs her. Raniero takes Angelica to bed, and they spend the night together. The girl falls asleep, and the Emperor thinks she's gotten way more daring since he never gave her permission to sleep. Now the Empress is an Actilos user that everyone recognizes, and starting tomorrow, everybody's gonna treat. The fact she beat some pro martial artists from Actilos after only training for like 1 month means she's got some serious potential. All of a sudden in her dream, Angelica starts making these weird noises like she's choking or something with her head jerking up. Raniero gives her mouth to mouth and then kisses her, but she totally bites his lip in her sleep. The Empress opens her eyes and they're full of tears. She dreamed some headless thing was chasing her with an axe. The girl is totally freaked out, shaking all over, and she just clings to Raniero, who hugs her to calm her down. By morning, Angelica is sleeping so hard, the Emperor had to say her name a few times. He shakes her a few times to wake her up, totally annoyed she's blowing him off, and orders her to get cleaned up and ready to apologize. Angelica feels super awkward eating breakfast in the main palace, especially with the Emperor giving her this intense, heavy stare down. The girl asks if she can bounce and go home after breakfast, but Raniero just smirks and is like, "This asterisk is asterisk, you're home now." She tries to play it off like she's just tired, but the Emperor is basically like, "Nah, you look like you slept great." Plus, she's gotta get back to her side of the castle, cause Sylvia is showing up at the Empress's palace. Raniero, and when he finds out it was her, he can't even believe it. Like if she had actually hurt the Emperor, she'd be so done for. Once he accepts it, he makes it clear how serious this is, and that she's gotta face the music for it. Since the Empress wants to bounce back to her home turf, Raniero decides her punishment is that she's not allowed to go. In the morning, the Emperor is just checking his mail. At noon, he has meetings, and at night, he does his workout standing right there by his desk. Angelica's wondering if she can make a run for it during his official meetings. Then she realizes Raniero has been on his feet all morning. He tells a servant to bring a chair so the Empress can sit next to him. As he opens another envelope, the Emperor finds a letter from the Tunia Temple. The Tunia Temple is this abandoned shrine out in some wasteland, a barren place in the northwest. The letter says the only people left there are believers in the God of mercy. They gave up all the good land to the world, and left their descendants with like the rough scraps. Right now things are kind of tense between Actilos and the Kingdom of Zombivia. Raniero is getting so bored reading the same old letters begging for help. When he turns back to Angelica, he sees she's passed out again and walks over to her. He starts shaking her by the shoulders to wake her up. When she's awake, the girl says she feels weird just sitting around doing nothing and asks if she can at least read the letters he's already finished. I mean, duh, the Empress has a right to know what's going on with the government. But Raniero's like, it's too soon for that. He just blows off her question, turns his back, and keeps working quietly, leaving Angelica trying to figure out what made him so mad. The Emperor sees she is scared and confused, and it's so amusing to him that he decides to just keep up the act. Finally, Raniero dragged Angelica around with him all day to lunch, to meetings, and even to his late-night training session. Only after all that did the Empress finally manage to break free and get back to her room with her maids fussing all over her. She was planning on throwing a party for Sylvia to celebrate her new position. For becoming her lady-in-waiting, but she couldn't do it today because of Raniero. Duchess Nirma tells Angelica how blown away she was by the hunt yesterday. She's like, Your Majesty has pretty much become the mother of the nation. Everyone totally loves you and is dying to see you. Now's the time for Angelica to get that postponed ball back on track, and Nirma admits she started a rumor in the high society circles saying that everyone needs to show the Empress some real loyalty ahead of time. Although according to Nirma, the chance to actually meet with the ruler at the start of next month isn't going to be for just anybody. After cramming on the schedules, Angelica will be ready for her big debut. Then she'd be running the imperial family, and her lady-in-waiting would do anything to help her. The girl barely wrapped her solstice duties, and now she's got a whole new list of stuff. She has no clue how or when she'll get it done being this swamped. She'll finally get around to her escape plan. The party's in 15 days, and this whole time, Angelica's been grinding with Duchess Nirma, not even realizing how fast time flew. The girl memorized all the names of the capital's bourgeois aristocrats, their family drama, and all the deets on their businesses. Catching her studying, Raniero snatches the book and sarcastically points out how interesting her reading material is. Sitting next to her on the bed, he says they're making her do all this pointless stuff and just yeets the book to the side. The Emperor explains that with her status, all she really needs to do is hold her chin up and talk with a shady little smirk. She's not required to know or even pretend to care about the names of whoever says hi to her. She'll just listen like she's above it all. Raniero advises her to just own the room. After all, she's the Empress and he doesn't see any reason why she can't use his method and just do her own thing. Raniero suggests she starts by learning to get her poker face on if she can't handle his advice. A week later, on the day of the party, Cecin tells Nirma that the event needs to be rescheduled because Her Majesty's period is all over the place and she's got intense cramps, especially on day one. The ladies-in-waiting start debating if they should even have the party, but Angelica just shuts them down. She decides not to postpone it and asks them to bring her some painkillers. Even though the pain is killing her, the Empress pulls herself together and gets ready to face the aristocracy. In front of all the waiting guests, she thanks them for coming and says she hopes they feel blessed for this opportunity and are always thinking about what they can do for their Empress. The ladies at the reception were all hand-picked by Duchess Nirma, a seriously ambitious woman. All of a sudden, Angelica has this horrifying realization that she's totally mixed up everyone's names and family lines. She thinks about how Raniero would handle this and remembers his advice. The guests are left totally frozen when they hear the Empress claim she has no clue who they are or what they do. Picking one woman from the crowd, Angelica bossily tells her to stand up and give her a quick intro. The Empress feels kinda bad for the Duchess Nirma, but she can't ruin her rep by showing any weakness. The guests start introducing themselves one by one, and she's all smiles saying how happy she is to meet them. Nirma is obviously salty that the party didn't go according to her plan, so Angelica asks her why. Instead of worrying about the Empress's health, she's giving her major stink eye. The Duchess apologizes, claiming that's not what she meant at all. Nirma is a super sly woman, which is why the Empress has to set some boundaries to keep her from getting too comfortable. The guests greet the Emperor when he walks in, which totally catches Angelica off guard. Turning to the crowd and scooping her up in his arms, he announces he's pretty much kidnapping her from this event. Raniero figures his wife would have way more fun with him than this lame get-together with these people. His attitude was a total diss to his guests, who were all confused, and to her ladies-in-waiting who were supposed to wrap up the reception. This is super shocking and just plain weird, since for the first time ever, Angelica actually seems pleased with her husband. When they run into Sylvia on the way, Raniero tells her the Empress isn't feeling well and completely rejects the girl's offer to walk her to her room, choosing to carry her himself. Angelica's noticing the Emperor is getting way softer with her every day. Sylvia dips out of the room to grab some painkillers, while Raniero pulls a chair up to the bed and sits next to her. Probably thinking Angelica must think she's all that showing up looking a mess in front of everyone. She says she's sorry, and Raniero points out she got lucky that place was just full of a bunch of idiots. Angelica just about jumps out of bed, remembering it's time for the big state affairs meeting. Turns out Raniero blew off the meeting too convinced. It wasn't even worth talking about for that long. When she asks what was on the agenda, Angelica finds out it was all about the Twenia Temple, some barren wasteland with zero influence whose mountain range Actilos couldn't care less about. The novel mentioned that Twenia used to ask them to chill with the beef between the two countries Actilos and Sonvinia. According to Raniero, it's about time for the demon animals to hatch so they can be wiped out. The Emperor thinks it's wild they're asking for mercy for such a brutal takedown. Angelica is hoping Raniero finally greenlights the expedition, since he's into all that bloodbath stuff, but he still hasn't made up his mind. The Emperor offers the girl a chance to personally bow down at his feet, and maybe then he'll show some mercy. Angelica wonders what's gonna happen if the temple sends envoys, and if Serafina will be one of them. She tries to push those thoughts out of her head, cause if everything sticks to the original script, the goddess won't show up and her meeting with Raniero will happen in the winter. But what if the timing of Serafina's appearance has changed too, just like how Angelica and Raniero got way closer than they did in the OG timeline? Even though a bunch of time has passed, that high society party never happened again, since the Empress's entire focus was on the Twenia temple. Even though Angelica knows Serafina isn't coming, she can't stop stressing and looks for more info on the temple, cause if those two cross paths early and the romance plot gets moved up, the girl is gonna lose her life before winter. Suddenly, Angelica finds some intel on Saint Twenia, the most prized being in their religious society. It says in there that the saint never leaves the temple's mountain peaks and has zero contact with the outside world. But that's literally all she could find, even though she had a vague suspicion that Twenia had some kind of pull. Still, there are way more stories about demonic creatures in the books. Turns out the people who live in the mountain pass of Twenia actually hunt and eat them whenever there's a major food shortage. When breeding season hits in the beast's territory, the adult animals, because they're short on food, attack the human lands. If Raniero goes to take down the creatures, he'll run into Serafina when he cuts through the mountain pass. That's why Angelica decides she has to go with the Emperor on this hunt too. And if it just so happens that at that moment, Raniero meets a goddess, she'll dip out of there immediately. The day the temple delegation is supposed to arrive finally gets here, and Angelica is totally freaking out. Raniero, who finds her in the hallway, wonders why the Empress skipped breakfast. The girl, who was worried her stomach would be a mess from the nerves, tells him she feels sick. Raniero advises her not to meet with the envoys. All of a sudden, Angelica grabs the Emperor's sleeve, and while apologizing, she insists he has to let her meet with them. Raniero agrees, and they head to the room where the meeting with the delegation is scheduled. Angelica is totally shook when she sees who it is. So the Archbishop of Tunis rocks up to the audience, standing with the other messengers right in front of the Emperor and Empress. And get this, the Holy Knight from the temple Eden is there too. He's Serafina's first love from the Order of the Holy Knights of the Thorn. That whole crew is made up of their strongest fighters who go up against demonic beasts. And even though Eden isn't like a main character or anything, he's a total rising star who climbed the ranks because of his insane natural talent for fighting. In the OG story, since Serafina was always crushing on him, he got straight up taken out by Raniero. The Emperor is basically just wondering if the people begging for his help actually brought a good enough tribute for him. Before the bishop can even answer, Raniero cuts him off and is all like he's gonna be merciful. He says he won't take their tribute. Instead, he orders them to get on their knees and beg to be saved. If the messengers don't do what the Emperor says like right now, they're gonna have to bounce, and the temple's forces alone won't be enough to handle it. The bishop is still kinda hesitant, but then Eden steps up and kneels before the Emperor, and then everyone else follows. The Emperor just starts cracking up, and Angelica is just thinking, what a disgusting pig. After the meeting, she's low-key weirded out that Eden actually kneeled. In the original story, he's described as this super honest knight with a rebellious streak who never backs down from what he thinks is wrong. Angelica accidentally overhears some of the maids talking, and they're totally gushing about Eden's training. They were saying it impressed them even more than the Emperor. Since the temple crew is staying in Actilos for 9 days, the Empress decides she should probably pay them some real attention. On her way, she bumps into Raniero, who apparently got bored of talking to the bishop and came over to hug her. Angelica tells him that she's planning on giving instructions for the big dinner coming up. But plot twist, the Emperor already made all the decisions. So he tells her she doesn't even need to bother, and can just head back to the palace. Then Raniero starts walking with Angelica. He's wondering why she's suddenly so into the temple, especially since she's been ghosting her usual studies about high society. You know, the stuff she used to try so hard at. She was even looking up info on tunas in the library and said she wanted to meet the delegation herself, even though she wasn't feeling great. The Empress's home kingdom Honro and the temple's main base are super far apart and have literally no reason to trade. So Angelica asks Raniero who he decided to put on the seating chart for dinner, and he asks her how she would have planned it. She's like, obviously the Archbishop, the commander of the knights, and the 2 old priests should all be seated based on their rank. But the Emperor thinks that whole seating arrangement is totally boring. To be honest, Angelica has no clue who else is supposed to be important, since this is the first time she's ever seen any of them. Like, if this was 2 months ago, an answer like that would have bored Raniero to tears, but now he's thinking that she totally wants to sit across from that knight dude at dinner. As he sits down on the bed, he calls her over. He's happy she's listening, but low-key wishes she'd come to him on her own. Anyway, that day the Empress told Cisen to keep an eye on Eden. And now her lady-in-waiting is back to spill the tea on what she found out. It turns out that Eden was sneaking a book out of the library, hiding it under his clothes, and then heading off to some place where nobody was around. Deciding she's gotta see this for herself, Angelica asks Sisson to get her out of having to go to training. So on the day they planned, the Empress sends Nirma to watch the practice with everyone else, but the Duchess is like, nah, I'm good. So the hostess is feeling super sick and can't be left alone, but Angelica convinces her that Sisson being there is totally enough. And she's pushing her to go have fun, telling the maids to hit her up later with who won, and finally, Nirma agrees. The Empress checks with Sisson if anyone's in the library, and after getting a reply, she calms down her nervous lady-in-waiting heads for the library, and from behind the bushes, she watches the path Eden would take if he went for the book again. Turns out Angelica's guess was on point. 'Cause pretty soon the knight shows up walking right past without even seeing her. She pops her head out of her hiding spot and stops Eden. She tells him he's not gonna find the stuff he's looking for, whatever it is. He explains he's not looking for anything specific. He's just exploring since he's super into books. Angelica asks him to say his name, but he claims he doesn't have one besides Aiden. The girl, scared she got it all wrong, insists that if he won't answer, he'd better get out of there. Staring right at her, the guy suddenly confesses his name is actually Chester. After confirming her suspicions were right, Angelica asks him about the book. The one they both clearly got pulled into. Turns out they both got transported into the book on the same day, May 18th. The girl, who thought this whole thing only happened to her, starts crying and confesses she had her servant follow him. The guy is glad to meet her since he also didn't think anyone else was in the same boat as him. Now he gets how Angelica understood him, since his actions are so different from the book she read. Since they don't have much time to talk, the girl immediately asks Eden about the book he read in the library. According to him, it's a book about forbidden magic, because he thinks that's how he ended up in this world. Angelica's read a ton of novels in this genre where the plot is all about getting transported to other worlds. That's why she never looked at it that way, or even wondered why or how she ended up here. From what the girl's saying, Eden figures out that the Emperor isn't one of the transported people. If he was, she'd be happy since Raniero is just as crazy as he was in the original. And every day she has to walk on eggshells. Eden doesn't get why there are two of him and Angelica, and both of them are side characters who died in the original. The guy plans to get rid of the magic and go back to where he lived before, however. Angelica knows that most characters in similar novels about being transported don't ever return to their original world. Raniero is bored watching the friendly fight at practice, glancing over at Angelica's empty throne every now and then. Tired of being bored, he gets up and heads to the Empress's palace, where he's met by Kisen, who is totally confused by his visit. Going into Angelica's room, Raniero walks over to the bed, throws back the covers, and finds out she's not in it. With a seriously evil look, he orders the servant who was trying to defend her mistress to shut it. Raniero noticed that a knight was a no-show at practice. Angelica used being sick as her cover. The girl asks Chester if he's seen Serafina, if she lives in the Temple of Tunny. However, the guy admits he doesn't know her at all since he's constantly avoiding her. Angelica is surprised by this confession, since the memories of the original characters are supposed to get passed down to them over time, and Eden is supposed to know Serafina. Chester confesses that the feelings of the guy whose body he's in are so strong that he gets influenced by them himself. However, even though he only has a messed up picture of it, he still thinks that the real Eden genuinely hates Serafina. Angelica's totally shook because she always just assumed the knight and the goddess had a mutual vibe. Chester explains that Eden was always a stickler for the rules and what's right, and thought it was super messed up to catch feelings for a holy knight. The dude's planning to dip on a mission to slay some demon beasts because he wants to check out the huge library in some abandoned temple. Since he couldn't find any clues the normal way, he decides to get risky, seeing as he's right on the border between beast and human territory. Angelica promises to dig up the info they need in the Imperial Library and swears she'll find him in Tunis if she finds anything. And he's completely floored to find out she's also planning to go on the mission to keep things from getting messy. They decide to wrap up the chat since Angelica really needs to bounce before the friendly sparring match ends. So relieved she made it back alive, and in one piece the girl walks into the palace. But then she just freezes. 'Cause right in the middle of the room, just sitting there in a chair, is Raniero the Emperor waiting for her with this seriously shady smirk. He asks why she went for a walk if she was feeling sick, and Angelica explains she just went out for some air 'cause her head was absolutely killing her. Noticing her hands were shaking, something Raniero totally clocked, she admits that his intense stare is freaking her out. The Emperor asks if she met up with that knight, and Angelica denies it, asking if he's suspicious of her or something. Raniero is kinda shocked that he's feeling so vulnerable and on edge just because those two specifically ditched training today. Even if his wife is into that guy, he's got no reason to get pissed since the Emperor can't even feel stuff. Like jealousy for some nobody like her. Angelica starts crying, admitting she can't lie to the Emperor. He gets closer, kneels down and hugs her, which totally catches her off guard, but she just seems so fragile, and knowing that getting mad would just scare her all over again, the Emperor says he's not angry. It was the first time ever that Raniero was able to completely play Angelica. In a relationship where they barely know each other, a little plot twist started to brew. The second the Emperor left, Angelica finally let it all out, because she had been seriously terrified. She legit thought it was game over and can't believe he got so mad about her being gone when to him she's just some insignificant prey. There's gotta be another reason. For now, she decides she needs to stay on Raniero's radar for a little while. The Emperor is chilling with his wife, chatting with the knights, and Eden and Angelica are acting like they're total strangers. The girl is so over this conversation and asks the Emperor if they can leave, but he suddenly pulls her into a soft hug. When the Emperor asks how everyone slept, the knight says they had a chill, comfy night all while he keeps stroking Angelica's hair. Raniero asks if the knights are digging the food. Eden is shook by the Emperor's sudden soft side, since Angelica had told him he was just as psycho, as he was in the original story. Angelica is also surprised and freaked out by Raniero's behavior, who suddenly decides to kiss the Empress, right in front of everybody. While he's kissing her, he's giving her the side eye, and his stare makes Eden super uncomfortable. The girl asks him to stop, because the knights have to bounce and Raniero agrees, telling everyone he obviously can't wait to be alone with her. Now Angelica is 100% sure the Emperor is onto her because of the way he was staring daggers at Eden. She gets a letter to the knight through Sizen basically asking him what she's supposed to do. Since the Emperor could have totally figured out their convo from Chester's reply, who was like, "Nah, I don't buy it," Angelica gets ticked off. Cause like the dude's not that bright. Watching her girl Sisen's just thinking about how much she's changed. Ever since she's been living in the Hanro kingdom back when they decided to ship her off to the Actilos Empire for the marriage thing. Sisen felt so bad for the princess who was crying nonstop. The maid wanted to bounce and ditch the marriage, but Angelica the Empress now seems like a whole different person to her. Sisen decides to spill her worries to her boss, but she can barely get a word out. When Angelica just cuts her off, she gets that her maid thinks she's catching feelings for the knight from the temple of Tunia. It sucks that she made Sisen doubt her, but she promises it's not what it looks like with tears in her eyes. The girl asks why in that case Angelica isn't telling her anything, because she was never like this before. Seeing her tears, the Empress explains she feels nothing for the knight, but that she's actually interested in the saint from the temple of Tunia. Still, Kisen doesn't get why Angelica decided to ask Eden about the saint when she could have just talked to the archbishop. The Empress answers that she did it because it seems like Eden has literally zero friends, plus she figured someone who doesn't really vibe with the temple would spill more tea than the archbishop. Hearing Angelica's explanation, Sisen is relieved and wiping away her tears, she apologizes for totally misreading the situation at first. The Empress swears she has zero intention of two-timing her husband, and Raniero overhears these exact words. He's right on the other side of the door. He cracks a smile because knowing how tight Angelica is with her maid, he doesn't doubt for a second that what she just said is true. Sisen is so happy the couple is vibing because not long ago her boss was bawling refusing to get married, and now she's adjusted to her new life so well. And she's become this respected Empress. Angelica admits it's hard, but she thinks His Majesty treats her pretty dang well. Hearing this, Raniero smiles again while Sisen says she hopes that over time the Empress will love this country even more. Angelica hopes so too, if she doesn't bite the dust during the winter hunt. The Emperor thinks it's hilarious that the girl is stressing about the winter hunt, because he'd completely forgotten about it. Remembering Angelica is interested in the saint from the temple, he thinks it would be a good idea to meet up with her when he goes on the expedition. That night, lying in the Empress's lap, Raniero can feel her good vibe. The girl points out it's because the Emperor's in a good mood, which makes her happy. They both laugh at how dorky Angelica is, since being this happy is kind of weird for her. Raniero places the girl's palm on his head, and she just goes with it and starts stroking his hair. The Emperor asks Angelica what other stuff she's into, and she's like, why is he suddenly so interested in her faves? The Empress decides to ask Raniero if she can tag along with him on the expedition to wipe out some demonic creatures. She gets that her request probably sounds super weird since she's a total scaredy cat, and yet she's asking to jump right into the middle of the bloody action. But then Raniero suddenly agrees to her request with a smile, since she wants to follow him. Angelica is shook. It's the first time she's ever seen a look like that on the Emperor. After all, he's always been painted as this total devil, and his whole essence seems straight up evil to her until now. But now his face is like so harmless and glowing that she reaches out and softly touches his cheek. Angelica knows she shouldn't be falling for this. I mean, this dude could turn dangerous at any second, but he just pulls her into a tight hug. She gets that he's not consistent, and that tomorrow he'll be the same old Raniero she knows, but for now she hugs him back anyway. The next day rolls around and totally shocking Angelica, the Emperor doesn't switch back to his old self. The Archbishop thanks the king for the welcome party, saying the whole delegation got some solid rest. After seeing the ambassadors off, the Emperor smiles again and hugs Angelica, leaving the girl totally shook. Cause one minute the terrifying Raniero Actilos is acting like the main character from some romance novel if you really think about it. It's cool that he's being nice, but Angelica can't take him seriously, not after what happened last spring. When they got married, he couldn't even stand her touching him, but now he's always asking what she's into. Lying in bed, she wonders if she can dip, before Raniero gets bored of her. Meanwhile, the Emperor is sipping wine and just thinking about why she won't just tell him what she likes. A few days ago, after he overheard Angelica talking with her maid, he felt this crazy desire. He can count on one hand the times she smiled, and he's dying to see her really light up. He realized he wants to own this woman, and for her to actually love him. Angelica's in the library, and seeing the leaves falling outside the window, she remembers that in 1 week he's leaving for an expedition. This whole time she's read pretty much every book there is on magic, but not a single one mentions people coming from another world. Guess it's like Eden said, there's no other choice but to head to the huge abandoned library at the sanctuary. Raniero walks in and sits down next to Angelica. and asks if there's anything she wants to see on the expedition. When she says she's not looking for anything specific, the Emperor asks about the saint who never leaves the Tuni temple. The girl totally freezes up. She doesn't get why Raniero is so interested. Is he trying to see Serafina or something? The Emperor is surprised by her reaction. He thought Angelica would be stoked to talk about something she's into. Smiling, he asks, "What's the big deal if I want to see the saint?" But the girl suddenly tries to talk him out of it. He doesn't get why she's pushing back so hard. And Angelica explains that Serafina is super beautiful, which could be a problem for her. When he asks how she dares to be so possessive, the girl, totally scared, tries to backtrack, saying she misunderstood him. But then Raniero just smiles. He actually likes Angelica's possessive vibe. 10 days later, the expedition to wipe out the demon beasts kicked off. Raniero is riding on horseback, but Angelica, even though she knows how to ride, got stuck in a carriage. The Empress only brought Cecil and Sylvia since having a tiny crew is better for bailing in an emergency. People say Angelica basically took Sylvia as a trophy, so while her own rep was getting better, the other girls was totally tanking. Even if the Empress makes a move, the lady-in-waiting won't be able to tell a soul, because nobody would listen to a quiet girl. After 3 straight days of traveling, the carriage doors swing open and Raniero tells Angelica to get out. The camp isn't even set up yet, so she has no clue why he called for her. Taking her hand, he asks if she's into beautiful things, and when she says yes, he leads her off somewhere as they go deeper into the forest. Raniero asks if it's true that people like her think shiny things are beautiful. Angelica is just frozen, stunned by a beauty she can't even describe. The ground lit up by the stars is covered in these sparkly flowers, and she can't even believe how the Emperor managed to find a place this sick, and asks her to smile if she's digging it. She feels like she's dreaming. She gets close to Raniero, goes up on her tiptoes and hugs him, gives him a kiss, and just keeps whispering his name. Raniero lays Angelica on the ground, and the girl gets it. If he brought her here just to see her smile, it's 'cause he actually cares about her feelings. When they finally roll up to Tunia, the Emperor is greeted by the bishop, who he tells to get beds ready for everyone. Raniero says he'll personally handle the food and clothes for his crew, but asks them to take care of the housing for him and his wife. While checking out the mountains around the Tunia temple, Angelica thinks the nearby towns look totally abandoned. A huge line of newcomers walks down the street, but not a single local comes out to watch. The Empress suddenly gets this new feeling that people see Actilos as something to be scared of. Raniero has a meeting scheduled with the commander of the Order of Knights, Santos, and asks if Angelica will join him. She says no, and the Emperor, not even trying to hide that he's bummed, pets her head as he leaves. Raniero has definitely changed, and Angelica has no choice but to accept that she's really into this guy. But who knows, maybe when he meets Serafina, everything will change. That's why she has to be careful. Angelica told Cezanne to bring a bag of money, but she doesn't want to bounce just yet. Just then, Eden sneaks up from behind, grabs the girl, and covers her mouth. He gives her the shish sign so she won't scream. When he lets her go, he apologizes for scaring her, and even though Angelica asks where Serafina is, and if she can meet her, Eden has already taken steps to stop that from happening. 'Cause if the original events start early, it could be a problem for him too. He suggested the Archbishop send Serafina on a trip, since a visit from a saint could be a boost for everyone worried about the house. Angelica, impressed with his quick thinking, then talked about her own fail at finding the books she needed. This world isn't described in any story. There aren't even any tales about souls switching bodies, though Eden thinks their only option left is to visit the abandoned library. Angelica decides not to show that she's skeptical about it. She announces she's leaving with the Emperor in the carriage, since that's what His Majesty wants. Angelica confesses to Eden that she thinks she likes Raniero, but he isn't surprised since he already knew. Still, Angelica is worried because this plot twist is way different from the original. Eden asks her if she's going to stay here, even if Raniero meets Serafina and feels zero interest in her. Angelica just stays quiet, and she's about to say something when Eden cuts her off, figuring her silence is answer enough for him. Angelica is embarrassed for him to see her like this, because she's all flustered just thinking that she likes Raniero. Grabbing her hand, Eden says he'll get it if she wants to stay, since things here might be better for her than back there. Angelica promises the guy she'll help him get back, even if she decides to stay here herself. Eden smiles and says it's better if they just go their separate ways and don't see each other anymore. Sitting at dinner, Angelica wonders if the changed Raniero will still value her, or if he'll fall for Serafina the second he sees her. She doesn't know if she can be sure that, even after getting through all the drama, she won't be let down by him. Then she sees the tiny bed made just for her. Angelica's realizing she messed up, like maybe she actually wants to stay here, because if she's being real with herself, in that other life she wasn't even that happy. She was so broke that like cheap books were her only form of entertainment. And she didn't even have any friends, while this Angelica was a whole princess raised with tons of love. Plus she's got her ride or die Cisen. But like there's no guarantee Raniero will love her forever, so logically, the smartest move is to dip. Then the Emperor just pops up in the doorway bringing food for Angelica, cause she skipped dinner. He sits down next to her and starts feeding her, and she notices Raniero brought her all her favorite snacks. Angelica wishes him luck for tomorrow. But low-key she's thinking she can't fully vibe with him until this fear is gone. When she's done eating, Raniero points out the bed is super tiny, like it can barely fit one person. He gets all close to Angelica and starts making a move, but she, feeling like her heart's about to explode, just shoves him away. Raniero just stares at her, totally shocked, and the look on his face hits her hard. She can't believe she just curved a guy who's probably never been rejected in his entire life. Knowing she has to fix this like ASAP before he gets mad, Angelica pretends it was all a joke. She says sorry for messing up and begs him not to be pissed, but Raniero's super chill and says he's not mad. He just gives her a gentle hug. He tells her not to be scared or cry. Her heart is pounding out of her chest. She just can't believe Raniero isn't mad at her. He pulls her onto his lap, and since the trip was totally draining, he tells her to just chill out and get some sleep. Some chick with a veil covering her face walks up to Angelica and hands her a tray. When she opens it, the Empress sees a literal head on the tray. Thinking it's Jackson's, she freaks out and shoves it away. The head rolls in surprise it's eaten. He asks Angelica if she's gonna stay there. As she's backing up, she realizes the girl in the veil is Serafina. Serafina is giving her this ice-cold death stare. When she tries to get away, she falls right into Raniero's arms. He's right there and calls her his winter prey. Serafina looks like she's trying to tell Angelica something, but she can't make out the words. She hears her name, and when she opens her eyes, she sees the Emperor freaking out, telling her to wake up. Angelica realizes it was all a nightmare. And it's super weird to her that in the dream she was ready to face death. When she looks in the mirror the next morning, she gets why Raniero grabbed her wrist so hard, because if he hadn't stopped her, the mark on her neck would have been way worse. Today's the day they head to the sanctuary, so Angelica decides to just get ready and forget about that messed up dream. When she goes out to the courtyard, she's chatting with the bishop. And right then, Raniero shows up asking if he can tag along. Turns out the whole trip is going to take 2 weeks. Even though the sanctuary is close, the squad has to go take out some beasts. If she thinks about it by staying here, Angelica could have plenty of time to explore the cathedral without Raniero watching her every move. So she makes up an excuse that her slow pace would just slow them down and announces she's decided to stay behind. She grabs Raniero's hand and tells him she wants to get this over with ASAP so she can get back to the palace with him. He pulls away, dropping her hand, and promises he'll be back as fast as he can. Then Angelica asks the archbishop for permission to check out the sanctuary she's read so much about, once the knights have taken it back. They start heading out and Eden totally clocks the Emperor's salty look. He's shook that Raniero's actually in his feelings. 'Cause he got left out of the hunting trip. Eden's like, no way, Angelica. Has the Emperor so whipped that he'd actually go against his wishes? He's acting like a whole different dude now, completely different from the guy in the book. Then out of nowhere, these demons jump the knights, and they just watch as Raniero absolutely wrecks the whole pack in a flash. One of the monsters makes it, but the Emperor whips out his sword and one-shots it. The more distance Angelica puts between them, the more something wild wakes up in Raniero. The crew rolls up to the sanctuary and finds a bunch of demon beast eggs everywhere. With this troll-faced grin, Raniero asks the knights if they've ever seen demon beasts being born. He tells them to off the newborns, snatch the moms alive, and leave the eggs alone. Eden's thinking the Emperor is straight up unhinged, 'cause in this insane battle on top of killing beasts, he's also having a blast collecting eggs. When some knight asks why they don't just smash the eggs, now Raniero's like, 'cause that wouldn't be any fun. One of the fighters tells the Emperor a baby hatched, but he didn't kill it. The little thing didn't even attack. Probably 'cause it thought the knight was its mom, and Raniero finds this hilarious. He tells them to gather the eggs and post a watch while Eden's over here wondering who the real monster is. Eden, who is up for guard duty, checks out the eggs and figures they're not gonna hatch just yet. So he decides to scope out the area. When he gets to the library, it's a total letdown, discovering it's way smaller than he thought. He walks up to a wall and spots this little stone door cracked open, and behind it there's this super narrow hallway. He realizes there's no way he can squeeze through, and just then, he sees some writing on the doorknob. The engraving says to break it with the sword of Tuni, when the blood of Actilos is ready. It's probably talking about Raniero Actilos' blood, since he's the godson of Actilos. But Eden's confused about this sword of Tuni thing, 'cause a relic like that doesn't even exist. He decides to go look for some files about it in the storage room, and right then, someone calls out to him from behind. The knight asks Eden what he's staring at on the blank wall, where there's literally nothing, and they dip. On day 2, after the punishment squad bounced, word came in that they took back the sanctuary way ahead of schedule. Angelica showed up at the lazaretto after hearing the injured knights got back first. Seeing how messed up the wounds on their bodies were, the Empress figured the mission to take out the beasts was super rough, but the knight was like, nah, the fight itself was a cakewalk. But Raniero's strategy was what really threw him. The Emperor jacked the beast eggs, and after they hatched, the babies imprinted on them thinking they were their parents. Then Raniero ordered them to feed the starving babies with their own moms. Hearing that, Sylvia drops all the medicine vials and totally shaking gets on the floor to pick them up. After telling Sisson to hold down the fort at the lazaretto, Angelica heads out to get some water for the knights and brings Sylvia with her. The Empress is kind of worried about the maid, but she doesn't know how to tell her to go take a break, since for someone from Actilos that could feel super degrading. Then out of the blue, the young woman asks Angelica why she cares so much about her, the daughter of traitors, when she totally doesn't deserve it. Sylvia spills that hearing about the beasts totally triggered a memory of her mom having to take people out in their own house just to survive. Angelica puts a hand on the girl's shoulder, and she just asks her not to talk about it, her eyes filling with tears. She just buries her face in her shoulder, and our girl cracks a smile, cause Sylvia showing her this vulnerable side means she has total trust in her host. The next day, she rolls up to the sanctuary with the Archbishop. Angelica's checking out the restored sanctuary, and the Empress asks if she can peep any of the books stored there. The bishop gives her the green light, but she's internally freaking out when she finds out Chester was dead wrong. Turns out all the forbidden works had already been moved, and only the stuff they can show to outsiders is left. After that, Angelica started hitting up the abandoned sanctuary every day. Reading the books was a major struggle since even though there weren't many, a bunch were damaged and the lines in them were all faded. The Empress is standing by the shelves, and suddenly to her right, a book just yeets itself off the shelf. When she picks it up, Angelica is frozen, totally shook. It's the literal novel she got dropped into. Skimming through that book, the girl notices the content seems way different from what she read before. According to this version, the word of war jacked the Sanctuary of Mercy. The Knights of Actilia get hit with a storm and are forced to fall back. Serafina hears the voice of God giving her a heads up that an important guest is coming soon, and she waits. Reading up to the part about the Empress's death makes Angelique's stomach churn. Maybe it's from reading the OG version, after spending several months with Raniero, but she feels like something is just off. Suddenly, Angelique finds a note from the author, written specifically for her. According to the author, if the world they created had like unbreakable rules, the Ward of Actilia would have no choice but to become possessed by Saint Tunia. Even if the characters around them and their messy relationships change, Raniero will inevitably meet Serafina and fall in love with her. Thinking it'd be better to just run from the Emperor, Angelique jumps when someone touches her shoulder. When she turns around, Angelique sees Emperor Raniero standing in front of her back way sooner than expected. He asks what book she was reading, and when he hears it's canon law, he looks surprised, remembering he clearly heard her cursing under her breath. Raniero starts flipping through the book, and Angelique starts to panic. Not knowing how to explain, the Emperor suddenly turns to her and asks if she's joking, calling it a decree, since all he sees in front of him is a blank page. He hands the book to a stunned Angelique and walks away from the sanctuary, asking if she remembers what he said 10 days ago. He takes her hand, and the girl can't believe the Emperor came back early over her words about coming home. Sitting on the floor with Raniero, Angelique asks him how the cleanup went. The Emperor tells her how he fed the pups their own mothers, complaining that she missed seeing that whole scene. That night, Angelica can't sleep. Her escape plan just got way harder now that she finally realized she's catching feelings for Raniero. She can't play him, and if she suddenly ghosts him now, he'll for sure get suspicious. Until he leaves for the winter expedition, she has to genuinely love him. So he has zero doubt that she could ever leave her beloved. The next day, it turns out they're already about to head back. Angelica's totally bugging because now she's got zero time to hit up Chester about the book. The Empress is like out of options and has to dump this whole thing on Sizzin, timing it perfectly for when Raniero's totally gonna eavesdrop on their convo. She calls over her lady-in-waiting and is like, "Yo, you gotta return that book to the sanctuary, the one I accidentally left with you." As soon as she's done giving the lowdown, the Emperor pulls Angelica into a hug. He's all hyped that they'll be back home soon. Later, Sizzin bumps into Aiden and tells him to take back the book the Empress swiped from the sanctuary. The lady-in-waiting also slips him the cash they had and spills that the Great Escape is going down in December with Aiden. Inside the book, there's a secret message from Angelica about the author's name, the one Raniero totally failed to read. But the knight can't see anything in the book either, so Aiden's like, let the Empress know the pages are totally blank. And then out of nowhere, the maid hits him with a question about his whole deal with Angelica. The girl just doesn't get why the Empress is planning to bounce with him in December if their relationship is legit. Aiden is also like super shocked that Angelica decided to dip because he totally thought she was going to stay in Actilos. When he sees he can't get through to Sizzin, he breaks down the Empress's decision. They got a prophecy saying the Emperor was going to take them both out. The lady-in-waiting finally gets why her lady was always sending her to see Aiden. It all makes sense now. Sizzin heads back to Angelica to spill the tea on her chat with the knight. Now that she knows about the prophecy, the maid is totally on board with the Empress's plan and has her back. Angelica finds out that Aiden also saw nothing but blank pages in the book, just like Raniero did. Sizzin brings up the secret door in the sanctuary that the knight found when he was checking out the library. The lady-in-waiting goes to snoop through the Empress's stuff while Angelica is just wondering how Aiden can't see the notes in the book, but she totally missed the door. Whatever, there's no time to overthink it now. She and Raniero head back to Actilos, even though the place was like super peaceful for the first time ever after they got back from wiping out those beasts. Angelica kept having these awful nightmares, and Raniero would wake her up every time asking what she was dreaming about. But of course she kept it on the down low. The Emperor totally knew she was lying, but for whatever reason he didn't grill her about it. He'd just pull her close and help her chill out. Angelica noticed that Raniero had been super chill lately, especially whenever she showed him a little affection. The girl asks if she can check out the new place they're setting up for Sizzin tomorrow, and he's cool with it, but she has to be back before the sun goes down. Cizan gets back home, and the servants are all there totally freaked out because their lady has been so quiet. The maid asks the butler how he manages to stay so chill when their lady comes home in a total funk. The guy just says everyone else needs to stop being such scaredy cats, and then dips to his room. Watching him leave, the maid thinks about how he's like such an oddball compared to the rest of the staff. He's the only one who got his own room. He talks all proper acts, super classy, and she's even starting to think he might be some down-on-his-luck noble hiding who he really is. But what nobody knows is that he was actually a big-shot holy knight from the Tunya temple, and to keep him close. The lady-in-waiting that Her Majesty trusts the most went out on her own and all the staff at the mansion. They've got zero ties to the imperial palace, and this whole thing is just a smokescreen so no one gets sussed. Like nobody would ever guess that the Empress, her maid, and the exiled holy knight are secretly plotting a getaway or anything. When Eden hit up Angelica through Cizan saying he was planning to dip to Actilos, she was like, how's he even gonna pull that off? Back at the temple, the knight spilled about his big sin being into the saint, and that's totally what got him exiled. Angelica gets just how intensely. Chester wants to bounce back to his own world. He couldn't care less about the fame and status here lately. The Empress's mental state has been getting super shaky because of this escape plan, but Raniero, who knows she's always having nightmares, isn't demanding answers for anything Angelica does now. He didn't even think Cizan's independence was sus, so she figures he won't suspect a thing. Rolling up to the lady-in-waiting's house, Angelica crashes on the living room couch, while the girl pulls the curtains shut. Eden walks in with a tray greeting the Empress, who he hasn't seen in a minute, and points out how wiped she looks. Angelica just says there's like no time left before Raniero's expedition. And then the guy confesses that last time he didn't spill everything about the door he found. Eden wanted to tell her everything face to face after he figured it out himself, but first he wants to talk about something else. Raniero is being way too overprotective of Angelica, and the dude thinks the Emperor is gonna want to drag her along on the winter expedition. But the Empress isn't buying it since Raniero knows she feels super crappy after coming back from the extermination. Before the Emperor takes off on his trip, she's planning to tell him she wants to go get treatment, and he won't fight her on it. The second Raniero leaves the palace, the Great Escape begins. But for now, Angelica hasn't picked a destination. The countries bordering Actilos have beefed up border security, so crossing over is going to be a pain. With Raniero distracted by Serafina, he might not even look for Angelica, but the Lord of Feoda, the place she picked for her treatment, could be a whole different story. If they spot the Empress, they'll ship her right back to the Imperial Palace, no questions asked. Eden thinks that's why they need to go somewhere close to a border where Actilos is on good terms. He suggests the Temple of Tunya as the treatment spot, and Angelica flips out because Raniero will be there. Eden tells her to chill since they have to go to the temple anyway, because the door is in some old sanctuary. Angelica gets that he's saying they should hit the temple before the Emperor gets there. Eden's sure that the priests who worship the God of Mercy won't find out what they're hiding. He tells the Empress about this inscription carved on the sanctuary's doorknob. Eden's been racking his brain for ages about what sword it's talking about, and he finally figured it out, something the girl guesses instantly. It's probably that Actila's sword is Serafina. Because in the OG story, her sword went right through Raniero. They've got to get in touch with the saint. Before the Emperor does so, they can get a look at Actila's blood, take her to the storeroom and pop open that door to see what's on the other side. Angelica feels kind of bummed thinking about the whole Actila's blood thing, and just assumes Raniero has to die no matter what. Eden's like, does he really have to die though? But either way, blood's gotta be spilled. Noticing Angelica's all worried, he asks if she's stressing about it. So like, even though they call him the guest of Actila, the tea is that he's basically God himself, not like that god from Tuni. Blood is the only way to like slide into the DMs of the god of Actila, since there are no temples or sacred texts, Angelica. She's bugging that saying no will make her look like she's capping, but she's still firm that her own life is the main character. For Eden, who can literally read her mind and knows the Empress can't lie, it's starting to look like he's actually catching feelings for her. The girl has no choice but to fake it till she makes it pretending she's putting on this whole vibe on purpose. She tells Eden not to sweat it, because she gets that her life is the top priority, and figures time will tell if this is real love or just a situationship. Or maybe just an excuse she's telling herself. Angelica decides to ask Eden if he came from a family with money. Like a loaded one, or at least if he had a chill life. After all, his past life could have been a total paradise for him. Meanwhile, this life for her is a total struggle, which is why she's asking Eden to keep that in mind, pointing out she's hesitating, because for her going back is not the glow up it is for him. A month later, if the plot moves along like it's supposed to, Raniero is going to dip on an expedition to the kingdom of Zombivia. Seeing the Empress scoping out a map of that area, Sylvia lets her know the trip takes about 3 weeks. The handmaiden finds it sus that Angelica is studying maps for like no reason. The Emperor walks into the office asking what they were gossiping about. Angelica explains to Raniero she was studying the maps to get the full scoop on the situation. He has her sit at the table and asks for her hot take on what's going on in that region. According to her, winter is definitely not the best time for a throwdown. Angelica points to Sunvinia, an area at the bottom of the mountain, and it's basically the only road connecting them to Actilos. If Actilos uses it as a base, it means their soldiers will get served up on a silver platter to Sunvinia. Angelica knows that in a place so far from the capital, it'll be hard to get a lot of soldiers out there in the winter. Raniero is totally shook by how smart she is. The girl points out that it's just common sense that there won't be a war in winter even if the borders are weaker than usual. If they take the chance to knock down the wall and clear the mountain to build a wider road, Actilos could totally wreck the Sumbinian forces one by one. The people of Actilos are born tough and don't quit, so if they make a move in winter, there's a huge chance they'll get a massive W. Raniero admits he waited for several years just watching the weather and waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. He's sure that if this winter is like the last few, this land will be Actilos' turf. But plot twist, Raniero has never talked about this with Angelica, and he's wondering how she got all this info. The girl explains she just figured it out by thinking like him. He shows Angelica the planned route. It's scheduled for early December. When she sadly mentions that the Emperor will be busy soon, he asks if he should just cancel. Hugging him, she promises it'll all be good and tells him to come back soon. Raniero admits he'd want to take Angelica with him, but she remembers getting super sick after the last expedition. The expedition route the Emperor showed her today is major intel that's gonna get leaked from the palace by Tisan and end up right in Eden's room. The Emperor overhears the handmaidens getting all hyped up about something, and Angelica tells him it's because the Duchess of Narma. Raniero finds out she's having a kid, and without even saying congrats, he kicks everybody out of the Empress's room and just crashes on her bed. Hearing how happy Angelica is about Narma's pregnancy, the Emperor asks if she'd be down to have a kid, saying that if they do, they've gotta have a bunch for the Actila trial. Angelica's like, wait, so our kids would have to take each other out until only one is left standing. When he says yeah, it clicks for her that her kid could totally take out Raniero just like he took out the old Emperor. But the Emperor's super confident no one can touch him, cause in Actilos they have zero respect for anyone weak, even if they're just kids. Angelica asks if they could diss her too, but Raniero's like, nah, you're family, and that he's the only one who gets to decide if she lives or dies. If anyone else tries to off his wife, they'll pay big time for that bold move. Meanwhile, Sylvia overhears the other maids gossiping about how lovey-dovey the Emperor and Empress are. Since the Emperor is crashing with Angelica again, they won't need the on-call lady-in-waiting until sunrise. That's when Sylvia realizes this is her shot and she's gotta move right now. She's getting sus vibes about the head lady-in-waiting being so independent and moving her place outside the palace. So Sylvia decides to roll up to Season's house to snoop around, but by the time she gets there, she realizes she's way too late. In front of the house, she spots a light in a window, and then suddenly Eden walks up to it. His new haircut might fool someone else, but as he pulls back the curtain, Sylvia totally recognizes him as that knight from the Tunya temple. Eden frantically knocks on Sisson's door to tell her that one of the Empress's maids is waiting outside. The guy gets that they've got a problem because the second they made eye contact, it was obvious Sylvia knew who he was. Eden and Sisson head outside to greet the girl who's like my bad for the late visit. Once inside, she admits she had a gut feeling that something weird was up and just followed her instincts. Like instead of throwing parties, Angelica is busy studying maps of the area. Sylvia's convinced she's forming an alliance. The girl wants them to spill their plans, but Eden swears he's not up to anything shady. Eden's explanation is that he's here because he got kicked out of the temple and was just lucky to find a job. But Sylvia isn't buying a single word of it, and she wants the real story. She decides to lay her cards on the table first, telling them she has no plans to get in the way of whatever the Empress has planned. Sylvia admits she totally hates the Emperor, cause to him people are just toys. What's just a game for him to cure his boredom is for her like a silent scream she'll have to live with forever. That's why if Angelica wants to double-cross the Emperor, Sylvia is ready to put her life on the line for it no matter what it takes. The girl knows the only one who can actually destroy him is Her Majesty the Empress. To Eden's comment that Angelica loves Raniero, the girl just bursts out laughing and says there's no way she loves him. According to her, the Empress might be thrilled and leaning on his power, but the only thing pulling her to him is just a survival tactic. But Eden's like, if that were true, the Emperor would have gotten suspicious instantly since he's a human lie detector. Sylvia is positive that it's hard for the Emperor to suspect Angelica because he's totally deeply in love with her. All of a sudden, So he decides to spill the tea to the girl about his and the Empress's plan to ditch Actilos. And when she asks what's next, he just grins and tells her the Emperor's gotta go. Lying in bed and telling Raniero she loves him, Angelica asks if she can bounce from the capital for a bit. Like while he's off on his expedition. She's stressing that if he's gone and she has nightmares, there'll be no one there to snap her out of it. That's why she wants to dip for a bit to recover. The Empress even picked the spot it's gonna be Docino County. Countess Anastasia is gonna look after her there. To Raniero, Angelica is like a total sweetheart, and he's ready to give her literally anything she asks for. During the meeting, the Emperor is totally zoned out. He can't even focus on the topic because he's constantly thinking about Angelica telling him she loved him. He just says the planned expedition is still a go, no changes, and then calls the meeting over. After the meeting, remembering Nurm is pregnant, Raniero asks to speak to the Duke, who's totally shook by the Emperor wanting a private chat. The Emperor asks if the Duke is happy about it, if he loves his wife, and what his definition of love even is. The question is super deep, but since you rarely get a chance to talk one-on-one with the Emperor, the Duke decides to play it safe and not say anything that might tick him off. He says he feels love when he sees his wife as someone totally amazing. He says love makes you forgive the impossible and be generous with stuff you don't like. From this, Raniero figures the Empress must think he's exceptional and one of a kind. Meanwhile, Angelica is practicing archery when the Emperor totally sneaks up on her. While she's practicing, he hugs and kisses her, gassing her up about how good her shot has gotten. He's worried if she'll be okay without him, but she just reassures him. Turns out the Emperor was already planning to give her an escort to make sure her trip was chill. Angelica just wants to travel with Sylvia Ceason and a porter, figuring she'll feel way more comfortable with her own crew around. She knows Raniero is definitely gonna have someone tailing her, but she figures it's all good, as long as they don't get too close. The days were getting colder, but the Actilos army was totally prepped for a surprise attack on Sambinia. Before the Actilos army left, Angelica got ahead of schedule and finished all the prep for her wellness trip. They say goodbye to Raniero, and hopping in the carriage, the girl heads out to Docino County. After seeing her off, the Emperor decides he needs to hurry since he's dead set on conquering Sambinia. The Countess is super stoked about the Empress's arrival. Even though Duchess Narma warned her not to take any chances, it's hard for her not to be on edge. Her husband has been cheating on her for a long time, and her son also bounced to another region because he was sick of his parents' drama. If it weren't for the emerald mine he owns, her father-in-law would have kicked her out ages ago. The arrival of a guest like this gives the Countess a reason to feel proud. She'd love to announce to the whole county that the Empress is visiting, but she's mainly there to just rest and recharge. The woman wants to get close to Angelica without making it weird. Everything has been set up to be perfect for the Empress, and the service is also super well trained to avoid any mistakes. Angelica is happy with the VIP treatment, and Anastasia is glad to make her happy. She's intrigued about who this guy is that traveled with them, since all anyone knows is that he was hired by Susan, and his name is Daniel. Apparently, by tagging along on this trip, he managed to earn a lot of trust real quick. The Countess and Daniel keep making eye contact a lot, and when she catches his smile, the woman blushes and gets all nervous. It turns out him flirting with the Countess, who's been living alone for a long time because of her husband's cheating, was all part of Angelica's plan. So the plan was a total W, and that very night, Daniel ended up in the Countess's room. She was totally swept off her feet by the charming dude, and once she was out cold, he carefully opened her dresser drawer. And boom, he found the keys that started this whole mess. The next day, the Countess discovers they're missing and totally freaks out. It clicks that Daniel could have been the one who jacked them last night. She's about to go confront him and get the whole story. But the Empress cuts her off, saying she wants to talk. Anastasia asks to put the convo on hold for something urgent, but then Angelica suddenly whips out the exact same key that was missing. According to the Empress, the lady dropped him yesterday taking off her coat, but she kept quiet so she wouldn't put her in a jam. The Countess doesn't remember even having them on her yesterday, but she figures the Empress wouldn't steal them, so she just thanks her for the gesture. Angelica suggests they grab some tea together before lunch, and the Countess gratefully accepts the invite. There are actually a bunch of reasons why the Empress picked this county for her getaway. First off, it's north of the capital, and from here they could get to the Temple of Tunia without having to cross the mountain. Second, even though Anastasia is loaded, her family's social status is kinda shaky, so she has to do whatever Angelica says to gain some clout through her. While they're having tea, the Empress starts complaining to the Countess about all the randoms in the palace, saying it's making her dizzy. The woman trying to suck up mentions a chill villa nearby, where Her Majesty could crash. Thing is, this villa on the edge of the property was already picked by Kisen as the starting point for the escape. He and Eden chose it way ahead of time, and even though staying at this villa was Angelica's OG plan, it's super cringe for her watching the Countess try so hard to get on her good side with her suggestion to post guards at the house. The Empress shuts that down since she's a total pro with a bow and arrow. If the Countess lets the Empress stay at the villa with just her crew, she promises she'll grant her one wish. Angelica likes that the villa is far away from the mansion, and that the wall is so high it's basically impossible to climb. Now the Empress just needs to ask the Countess to respect her desire for privacy, and to hand over the keys. Finally, the four of them are alone, and Angelica notices that Sylvia seems super hyped. The Empress is really stressing out because Eden threw his escape plan into the mix without even running it by her. After confirming everything is still on track, they sit down to chill for a minute, and Angelica thinks about how hard it is to lie every single day. After the Empress bounces, Raniero keeps coming to her palace. The servants heard he's been crashing there every night and are starting to worry if he's okay. Before they dip out of this place tonight, Angelica goes over to Ceason with a request. She asks him to grab her some paper and a pen so she can write a letter to the Emperor. In it, she tells him she got to the county. Okay, she's not having nightmares and she'll be back on her feet soon. According to Angelica, once the Emperor's expedition is over, she wants to start training again to get ready for the hunt. While he's reading her letter, Raniero thinks about swinging by to pick up Angelica after conquering the land of Sambinia on his way back to the capital. According to Eden, 4 people would totally attract too much attention, so they should split into 2 groups. First, they'll head north with the Empress, and a week later, Sylvia and Ceason will go south. While she's packing her stuff, Angelica starts worrying that something might go wrong, and that they might get clued in by how worried they are, so they better chill out for their lady's sake, 'cause they'll link up at the temple soon. Angelica gives her ride-or-die assistant a hug, the one she never told she was secretly the Empress. The Empress hops on her horse, and Sylvia is like, "For real, you got this." Angelica wishes the maids good luck, and then she and Eden hit the road. The closer they get to the checkpoint, the more the Empress starts freaking out, and then bam, they're there. Angelica feels like she's gonna hurl from the stress. But Eden isn't about to waste time. The guard who stops them demands to see their pass, and they hand over the token they swiped from the Countess. Eden tells the guards that he and his wife are merchants who traveled all the way from the south to take care of his sick mom. But the guard with this super shady smile is basically like, "You really think I'm that dumb?" Saying merchants don't have like pale and nice-looking faces. Angelica finds this whole thing super sketchy. Like why this dude hasn't just busted them right then and there or called for backup. She decides to step in and starts gassing him up, talking about the guards' hard work staying out late for the good of Actilos. Angelica had to leave most of her bling behind, scared they'd get caught, but she brought this one gold bracelet that she now decides to give to the guard. The guy literally bites the metal to check if it's legit, and once he's convinced it's real, he lets them pass. The second they're through the gate, Angelica just starts bawling and tells Eden not to look back at her. He has no clue why she's so emotional, or if he should comfort her, but she just insists he keep moving. The travelers get to this field covered in bright flowers, and just stop for a second, totally captivated by how pretty it is. For a moment, Eden thinks the Empress is crying again, but when he turns around, he sees she's actually smiling. An insane wave of relief just hit her. It was so huge, she couldn't even hold back her emotions. All her days before this were just a constant hustle to survive. Angelica was always dodging crises and staying on high alert, super focused and sharp. Now it doesn't even matter if she screams or runs. 'Cause for the first time ever, she feels completely free. Meanwhile, some servant sent by the Countess shows up at the villa to check if the Empress is doing okay. He's got a gift for Angelica, but Season grabs the basket and basically tells the unwanted guest to bounce. Sylvia's stoked because this confirms that nobody has a clue the Empress and Eden dipped from the villa last night. The whole plan to wait a week before leaving was to cook up an alibi for the Empress. When the Empress's ladies-in-waiting, who are still at the villa, are seen in public, everyone's just gonna assume she's there too. But once her crew disappears, nobody will know for sure when Angelica's squad actually left the county, which is gonna cause major confusion for the search party. While they're taking a break, the Empress is stressing about the meetup with Serafina, but Eden tells her not to sweat it. He also advises her that if she can, she should stop thinking about Raniero, because if she's catching feelings for him, it could really hurt. That night, Angelica suddenly gets a bad vibe that someone's coming, and she tells Eden to get his weapon ready. Eden's shook and asks how she knew, and right then they get ambushed. The Empress immediately draws her bow. The girl fires in a split second and takes out one of the attackers, who turns out to be their leader. Eden gets another one with his sword. But he totally misjudged his strength and jammed the weapon in so deep he couldn't get it out. The dude is getting his hand messed up, but Angelica swoops in just in time to cover him, taking out that attacker too. After they wasted the bandits, Angelica patches up Eden's wound. He's totally clueless how she saw that attack coming. It seems like after spending so much time in Actilos, Angelica's intuition is on a whole other level now. Even though they didn't really get any good rest, they decide to dip and hurry on toward the temple. Meanwhile, the Countess is getting ghosted left and right, trying to meet the Empress, who's claiming she's super sick. So even though Sylvia and Zeeson had those extra passes Eden swiped, they didn't even go through the checkpoint. Instead, they took this secret shortcut the locals use on the down low when they need to slide someone some cash. Zeeson was dropping serious coin, so the search party is gonna follow their trail, thinking only the Empress could afford to spend like that. Then you got Raniero, who sees Angelica in a dream where she's confessing her love, and he wakes up all shook because nothing like that has ever happened to him. He feels the devil's breath on his back, whispering to him to just forget all that and only remember the war, the blood, and the screams. Even though the group's speed is slower than on the Tanilla Temple mission, His Majesty's army is pushing forward no problem. The soldiers' morale is totally maxed out, like they've been waiting forever to conquer Sombinia's lands, and this slow burn advance is actually making them even more savage. Raniero is 100% sure that when the battle kicks off, the enemy army will be an easy clap. The devil is totally vibing with this. 'Cause with Angelica out of the picture, the Emperor is back to being his little puppet. Over with Duchess Nirma, she gets the news that the Countess is visiting, and she's pissed because Anastasia should have been the one greeting the Empress right now. In the hall, she's met by this freaked out lady who's screaming, yelling that they've both been played. The Countess spills the tea on how the Empress asked to borrow a villa, and then just vanished. Nirma is hit with this wave of pure terror, 'cause she knows how much the Emperor simps for his wife. Anyone connected to her disappearance is gonna get absolutely wrecked. Pulling herself together, she tells the Countess to chill out, and decides she's gonna get to the bottom of all this before the Emperor gets back. Anastasia has a hunch that Angelica bounced from the county a while ago, even though they only found out the Empress was missing this morning. After hearing the whole story, Nirma decides to check all the travel permits, 'cause the runaways could have faked their papers. She also orders a search of that sketchy path the poor locals use. Angelica and Eden are still on their journey, but it's getting super cloudy and the dude's worried it's gonna start snowing. The Empress is like, "It's all good." And this time Eden actually trusts her gut feeling. The girl feels like someone's whispering stuff in her ear, and following it makes their path way easier. when she hears the voice again and heads where it's pointing. They spot an abandoned house right in front of them. They go inside, look around, and after making sure nobody's there, the travelers decide to crash there for the night. Eden heads out to find some firewood and asks Angelica to tie up the horses for now. Under a roof and with a fire going, the girl feels way more chill. Eden starts up a conversation with her, talking about his old life, and he's shocked to realize he's like blanking on his real name. Angelica reminds him his past life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. But in the end, she's running from this one too, because she doesn't feel safe here either. Eden then admits to the girl that for real, he's a rich kid just like she suspected. Angelica just laughs and asks if he told her that just to flex on her as he suddenly leans in close. So Eden's like, will the money I promised make you feel safe enough to go back? And then he spills what Sylvia said, that Angelica isn't even in love with the Emperor and just chose him to save her own skin. And honestly, that might be legit, because as soon as she got here, the girl did everything she could to not mess with Raniero's feelings and just get by. After she got his trust and started living a normal-ish life, she played him and dodged everything she didn't want to do. Getting right up in Angelica's face, Eden holds her cheeks and asks if she'd for real be okay if Raniero dies. Just as he figured she's struggling with the question, wondering if it's just her survival instincts messing with her head. But she's sure his death wouldn't be something to celebrate. Still, Angelica's not even sure if she'd cry or be messed up about it for the rest of her life, even though his face is like constantly popping into her head. When they talk like this, it's cause she's still kinda attached, you know? But the second she got over those feelings and bounced from Actilos, the feeling of relief was 100% real, cause that whole nightmare that was haunting her just vanished. It's been 17 days since they dipped from Villa Docino, and the weather is getting seriously nasty. But they're so close. Eden's getting stressed that they're gonna be late and run right into the Emperor at the temple. But then this crazy clear voice whispers to Angelica that it's not gonna happen. The girl literally can't feel her legs anymore and can't keep going, so Eden just scoops her up. Cause stopping here is not an option. And so finally, totally frozen and wiped out, the travelers make it to the Temple of Tunia and get inside. The archbishop who greets them asks Eden what went down and why he came back. Angelica reminds the bishop who she is, and gives him the whole story about escaping Actilos. Then she gets on her knees and begs God's crew for a place to crash and some food. Eden's begging the Empress to snap out of it, but she's just lying on the floor completely out of juice. Suddenly she's shook, thinking she's seeing Raniero's face again and has no idea why. Like she's actually terrified of him, but the memories just keep flooding back one after another, right in front of her, and then she blacks out. When she comes to, Angelica is totally lost about where she is, since the temple room where she'd been with Raniero looked way different. The door opens and Serafina's standing there with a plate of food, explaining that it's her room for now. Meanwhile, at the base of the mountain near the Sambinia border, the Imperial army is totally stuck because of the insane weather. Raniero decides to turn back, but their supplies might not be enough, so they have to make a pit stop at the Temple of Tunia on the way. After getting Angelica to eat, Serafina gets curious about how the girl managed to survive for 17 days in that frozen wasteland. The saint asks the Empress to spill on why she ran from Actilos. Eden was supposed to be the one to talk to Serafina, but now he's completely exhausted. So Angelica asks if he already talked to the saint. Serafina admits she gets a weird vibe from that guy, since someone who used to despise her was suddenly kicked out of the temple for confessing he had feelings for the saint. She knows it can't be a coincidence that months later he shows back up at the temple with the Empress. That's why Serafina couldn't meet with Eden. It freaked her out and made her sad, which, I mean, duh. So like totally different from the book, Angelica can straight up feel the vibes of someone this close. It's a whole different vibe. So she finally decides to give Serafina the lowdown like real quick, that the Emperor of Actilos is about to roll up to the temple. Then out of nowhere, she starts bugging out, totally freaked by what she's about to say, and Angelica begs the saint to take him out. The girl is totally shaking. Raniero's sweet voice is just echoing in her head, and she's begging Serafina for mercy. Saint Tanya tells her to chill, but Angelica's like, no, for real, this is for your own good too. But she can't just say it out loud. She can't say that Raniero's gonna try to mess up and wreck Serafina, so she just says it's for Eden's sake too. When they ask how she knows Angelica, spills about some prophecy book she found in the sanctuary. The Empress whips the book out of her bag and shows it to the saint. She warns her that only she can read what's written in it. Serafina opens it and yep, the pages are totally blank. Angelica says Eden is in on this prophecy too. Cause according to it, he's supposed to get taken out by Raniero. Serafina is shook, but the Empress gets that it's a lot to take in. Angelica also drops the bomb that the prophecy says she has to die first. And wild enough, the saint just totally buys her story. She's like, I believe you, and says she feels super bad for her. Lying in bed, Angelica is just thinking over how Serafina reacted. Cause even though the saint got it, the whole thing just feels kinda sus to her. Stepping out of the temple in front of the crowd, Serafina announces that a huge Imperial army is about to pull up to the sanctuary. Tuania already got help from Raniero before, so now they can't just ghost people who need help when things are tough. Everyone's getting kinda antsy. But whatever the saint says is basically law, so they start debating where to put all the soldiers. Eden, watching Serafina's whole speech to the people, realizes he's already making his move. After knocking on the temple door, Raniero finds out from the archbishop that they already knew he was coming. Sitting in the chapel where no outsiders are allowed, Angelica hears a noise and realizes the Emperor is already here. Ever since they locked her up in the chapel, the girl's been non-stop thinking about Raniero just dipping already. But it's been 3 days and he hasn't bounced from the temple. Nobody comes to the room, but they always leave a plate of food by the door. According to the OG story, the big showdown between them should have already gone down. And Angelica just doesn't get why he's still hanging around. All of a sudden, the chapel door opens. Angelica gets up thinking Serafina's back. But psych, it's Eden. When he finds out the saint hasn't shown her face here in 3 days, the guy gets totally ticked off, where did she even go? Eden wants to jet and find her, but Angelica grabs his arm and tells him to stay put. She asks if the Emperor is still around. He grabs his head and is like, the whole situation's changed, Raniero still hasn't even met with Serafina. Eden thinks the saint who was supposed to greet the Emperor at the temple is straight up ghosting him on purpose. The guy plans on switching up the original plan to get to the sanctuary. Before Serafina takes out Raniero, in Tuni and the villages nearby they've set up shop. 10,000 soldiers who are crashing and eating in people's houses. When the Archbishop said they couldn't handle that many, the Emperor just chucked a bag of coins on the floor. But over here, people live by trading stuff, and gold is basically worthless to them, something Raniero knew and totally used to his advantage. Either way, if Serafina offs the Emperor, and the soldiers are left without a leader, they're gonna totally trash this place. So they gotta bounce before it all goes sideways. Eden tells the girl to lock in on just 2 things for now. The blood of Actilos and Tuni's sword. Then out of nowhere, the dude tells Angelica to hush up for a sec. 'Cause he feels like someone's creeping nearby. Then Raniero just pops out from the corner thinking he heard his wife's voice.